From what I've been hearing, we are in the middle of a male loneliness epidemic. It sounds pretty scary. Like maybe we need hazmat suits. Maybe the government needs to intervene. Maybe we need to get vaccinated. Well, I don't think that's what's really going on here. I don't think we need government intervention or a vaccine. I think there's something a lot more simple at play here. And I think the media, like with everything else, blows it up into something that is much more interesting than what's really going on. So today, I want to dig deep into this epidemic and see what the solutions are. Stay to the end, because if you are experiencing male loneliness, and I think that loneliness is something we all experience from time to time, I might have some solutions for you. This is Life 2.0. Let's talk about it. So apparently 15% of guys can't pull together enough friends to move a couch from one side of the room to the other. Well, that means 85% of us have got it figured out. And I've known a lot of guys in my life, and we're not the sharpest tools in the shed. So if 85% of them have got it figured out, I would imagine that it's probably not as tough as we think. In my mind, what's really going on here is not a loneliness epidemic. It's more like a laziness epidemic. It's so much easier to scroll on Instagram or TikTok or play a video game and talk to your friends or whoever it is that's online and talk trash and all that stuff with them than it is to actually go out and meet someone. It's a lot easier to order DoorDash than to go to the grocery store where you'll be confronted with people. It's not that men are necessarily lazy or lonely, it's that we are lazy by nature. This is a survival instinct that we've had since the very beginning. We're conserving calories. So it's not a loneliness epidemic. It's just that screen time has taken up face time. And screen time is so much easier to interact with than people. I think this is something that has a fairly simple solution. I think that we can manage this on our own. I don't think we need to have a whole team of psychiatrists together. We don't need to have a seance or a yoga circle, or we don't need to sit around and talk about our mothers and cry and share our deepest thoughts with one another. I'm pretty sure that if we're really focused on wanting to make some inroads into this problem, we can do it ourselves. Rather than being a crisis, I think this male loneliness issue is more like an annoyance. It's more like a flat tire than it is an epidemic. That's the first error I think that the media makes. The second error is that it's not a male-only issue. Turns out women are just as lonely as men. Yeah. Now they're slightly better in terms of the way they fill out their surveys, but you know what female friendships are like. Women are more likely to have frenemies than they are to have friends. As men, we know that our superpower is our ability to focus. Women tend to have this diffuse focus, where they are focused on lots and lots of things at the same time. And so they're more likely to call someone that they know a friend than a man is. Now when we're in focus mode, like say we're focusing hard on school or on our career or on some other aspect of our lives, we're less likely to give attention to other areas of our lives. That's why frequently our apartments aren't very well kept. That's why you'll find pizza boxes laying around, empty beer cans laying everywhere. This is the young, unfocused, or hyper-focused mind of a man. We're focused on one thing, we do it really well, and we don't have a lot of time and energy for other stuff. So we run into problems here as we get older, that when we get married or we get into long-term relationships, we focus all of our time and attention on that. And it's really easy for us to lose focus and attention on our friends. And that's how it happens. We inevitably fall into this trap of getting a girlfriend or getting trapped on some, career path or maybe focusing even on a video game or something else, and our friends just kind of fall away. They move away, we just lose track of them. One thing leads to another, and we find ourselves lonely. Now, just because a man doesn't have any friends, let me just start here, doesn't mean he's necessarily lonely. The first thing that we need as men to understand, at least from my perspective, is that a large percentage of us feel really, really comfortable being alone. And I am one of those guys who has never felt the strong need to have a bunch of people around me. In fact, my mom would force me to go out and meet other kids when I was young because I enjoyed playing on my own so much. And even to this day, I still fall into that trap where it's easy for me to just get caught in my own little world, making videos, training people, to not get out and socialize. So just because a guy doesn't have a lot of friends doesn't mean he's lonely. Let's characterize lonely first. Lonely is a state of being alone that results in some kind of psychological or emotional stress, some state of dis-ease, some sense of not being well, a desire to have something that you can't get and you don't know what to do to get it. That's what loneliness is. And the mere fact that a man doesn't have a bunch of people in his life does not necessarily mean he's lonely. However, our media will jump on that and they'll say, well, look at our poor failing men. They can't get their shit together because they're all so lonely they don't have any friends. This is obviously the result of toxic masculinity. The whole idea that, you know, being a stoic man and holding in your emotions and, you know, not having any vulnerabilities in your life is going to isolate you from the rest of the world and turn you into some kind of a demon, you know, some kind of a potential serial killer at some point. Yeah, well, nothing could be further from the truth. You know, this is all eyeball catchers. That's what they really are. It's all about the algorithm. It's about generating likes, generating views, creating a used to be called a storm in a teapot kind of thing. You know, the perception of what's happening and the reality of what's happening are not necessarily true. They mix in a whole bunch of other statistics when it comes to male loneliness that have nothing to do with male loneliness, like the percentage of men who are not going to college. And they call that a problem because they're afraid that these poor guys, not only are they lonely, but they're going to be stupid. They're going to be stupid and they're not going to have any money. Oh my God, what are these poor guys going to do? Well, in case you haven't noticed, college educations cost a small fortune, a king's ransom in a lot of cases, to get a college education. And at the end of it, especially with the bachelor's degree, you've got no guarantee of getting any kind of job at all, much less a job that's going to help you pay off this enormous debt you just took on. So maybe these guys are a lot smarter than you think. Maybe they're better off becoming electricians or HVAC mechanics or carpenters or developing a skill that will allow them to make a good living with their hands without going into huge amounts of debt and become financially independent, maybe own their own business at some point, and laugh at all those guys with the 4-year degrees that are working as bank tellers somewhere. And actually those jobs will be gone too because AI is going to take them all sooner or later. So I'm beginning to wonder if maybe this whole preconceived idea that you need to go to college in order to make a good living is, you know, yesterday's thinking. This isn't a valid complaint anymore. The next complaint you hear from the media is that, you know, all these young women, they're in relationships, but these young men, much smaller percentage of them are in relationships. Like 2/3 of young women and just 1/3 of young men. So what's going on there? Well, young women have always gone to older guys, number one. Number two, lots of young women these days are kind of vacuous and empty-headed, and most young men don't want anything to do with them because they know exactly what they're about. Thirdly, sex is no longer a part of long-term relationships. Having sex as a young person these days has probably never been easier. I know that there's a certain percentage of men who are having some trouble getting sex, but those are probably the same guys who are just stuck playing video games. We'll get to that in a second. But you don't need to get married to have sex. And if you just want to have a relationship, well, that's certainly something you can do without getting married. And finally, a lot of young guys are hearing the stories about divorce and the legal system getting involved in their lives, and they're just opting out of that. And so until society changes that structure, why would a man get involved? I mean, what's the point? There's nothing beneficial in that relationship or in that situation for him, so why would he do it? It's just like spending all that money going to college. Why would he spend $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 getting a college degree only to have a bunch of debt and no job? And why would he spend a lot of time, energy, and money to get married just to have some woman leave him and have the legal system basically enslave him for the rest of his life, taking care of her kids and paying her way for the rest of her life? So there's a lot more going on than just men not measuring up. In fact, I would suggest that men not measuring up is the outcome of all these other things. And it's not necessarily the men themselves who aren't doing a good job, it's that society has failed men to some degree. As I said earlier, men make friends differently than women. Women can become friends standing in line for the bathroom, you know? Men are not quite like that. I mean, yeah, we won't talk to guys in the bathroom. That's just not gonna happen. But you might make an associate, you might talk to somebody like standing in line at the bank or something like that, but you're not gonna think of that guy as your friend. He's just some guy you're talking to, you know? Guys make friends when they're doing things together, when they're shoulder to shoulder, working on a task, and they're learning about the character of the guy they're working with. Men do not bond based on just verbal communication. They bond on activities, because activities give you some insights into what that other guy is really like. So if you're playing sports with somebody, you get a real sense for what that guy's heart is like. You know whether he's got what it takes or not. Now, regardless of whether he's a gifted athlete or not, you can tell the amount of effort that somebody puts in. You can tell when somebody's got your back and when they don't. You know when you can trust someone and when you can't. Men commit to relationships with other men based on their trust, whether they have respect for that guy and whether they can trust him. Women, they don't use that criteria. I don't think women trust each other to begin with. I think they all know that they will stab each other in the back if it serves them. I think that most women do not have deep, profound relationships in the same way that men do, quite honestly. So when they start talking about friendships, you know, and how many friends that a man has, well, a man defines that word friend completely differently than a woman. So I think that the criteria that they're using is completely different. If you feel lonely, and I mean that you have a sense of dis-ease because you do not have enough relationships in your life, and you feel like having a more balanced social life is critical to your development as a man, then you need to get off the couch. That's the first step, because you're not going to meet anybody sitting in your living room. You need to think about what kinds of activities you would enjoy doing. Men bond over activities. We do not bond sitting at coffee shops. Shoulder to shoulder, not eye to eye. So think about what you'd like to do. Rock climbing, woodworking, softball, bowling. There's a whole myriad of activities. If you just have a basic interest in one of these things, or just even curiosity about something that you might like to learn, then you've got a good place to start. So look in your community for opportunities to get involved in these activities, whether it be through a community college or a community center or, a club or something along those lines. Most of these organizations are really glad to have people join. Try the Meetup app. I've mentioned that in other videos. I think you just got to get engaged to get off the couch and make a plan for yourself and get out there and start meeting people. So how friendships are built are with familiarity, meaning people see you in places, and repetition. So you've got to get out there and do it over and over and over again. It's like building a good body. You can't lift weights one time and expect to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're going to have to hit the gym over and over and over again. So building a friendship is the same way. Once you find a community that you feel relatively comfortable with and you find an activity that you have some interest in, then just keep going. Just keep going. It's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight, but you're going to start developing relationships. People are going to start to admire you. They're going to want to know you. They're going to invite you out to do stuff. And next thing you know, you're going to start meeting people. And then once you start meeting some people, inevitably, you're going to connect with their friends. So your circle of friends is just going to grow exponentially as you do that. Now, like I said, laziness, I think, is your biggest biggest problem. I think that most guys are not lonely because they're lacking social skills. I think they're lonely because they're lazy. They're just too lazy to get off the freaking couch, stop playing video games, stop calling out for food, and get outside and meet people eye to eye. You know, you got to get out there and talk to people. Now, if you don't think that you're feeling a sense of dis-ease from your lack of male companionship or friends in your life, and you feel pretty comfortable and confident that your life is going as you want it to, and you being alone does not put you in a state of negative, frame of mind, then don't worry about it. You're not lonely. You're not lonely. Solitude and having a time of reflection in your life is completely normal. And just like the change of seasons, things happen for a reason at a certain time, So there will be times when you'll have more friends, and there'll be times when you have fewer. There'll be times when you're busy, and there'll be times when you're not. Use these times and the opportunities that they afford you to get the most you can from them. Because it won't always be like this, I guarantee you. People tell me sometimes, well, I'm so bored. It's like, I wish I was bored sometimes, It's like, no, don't feel like you're, like being bored is a problem. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to figure out what you want to do. It's an opportunity for you to put some thought into the next step in your life. It's an opportunity for you to imagine what you're going to use that next opportunity for. So don't allow yourself to see the negative side of everything that's happening. Always look for the opportunities that lie within whatever set of circumstances you're confronted with. Because I guarantee you there are opportunities there. So don't fall for the hyperbolic, media-driven, crisis-focused, screaming at the top of your lungs, we've got a crisis here, someone pulled the alarm, we've got to do something, everyone needs to get involved. No. We don't have a male loneliness crisis. We have a male laziness crisis. Young men, and I was one once, are inherently lazy. And unfortunately, technology allows you guys to be lazier than I could have ever dreamed. If it were up to me when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, and I could get on Tinder and swipe enough times, eventually some girl would show up at my door, I would never leave the house either. I wouldn't have any friends. The reason we had friends back then is because you needed to go out with some guys in order to meet some girls. That was the whole point of it. Like, I didn't have a bunch of guys hanging out with me because I liked hanging out with a bunch of guys. I had a bunch of guys hanging out with me because they opened the door to a bunch of girls. That's all. That's what it was. Now, I enjoyed my friends, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it was like we were depending on one another to put us in positions to get some. You know what I mean? Like, we were all like, we're gonna go to a bar together. Nobody wants to go to a bar alone. You go to a bar with 4 or 5 guys, you spread out in the bar, you start, it's like a pack of wolves, you start circling and looking for your prey, and it was a lot of fun. It was like a sport. It was it literally was like a sport. It was a game that we would play, and it was fun. It was same as like being on the field, playing football or soccer or baseball or whatever. It's the same idea, and it wasn't about necessarily hanging out with them for the sake of hanging out with them. It was like hanging out with them to have something to do. We didn't have video games. We didn't have infinite amounts of entertainment streamed to us day and night. We had 3 channels, sometimes 4. And we only usually had like 1 or 2 TVs in the whole house at most. And one of them was in our parents' bedroom, and the other one our father was sleeping in front of. So there was no time to play video games and watch TV. We had to get out. And our lives were fun, and they were adventurous, and we got into lots of trouble. I implore you, have some fun, get into some trouble, get out there, meet some people, enjoy yourselves. Be careful about the whole Me Too thing, man. That stuff we didn't have that either. So I gotta give you some credit there. That's a problem, but definitely you can get out there and meet some guys. You can start hanging out with some friends. You just need to get off your couch, think of something you enjoy doing, have an interest, some curiosity about, call some organizations, get yourself set up, go and do it. You know, like I said, it's familiarity and repetition. You're not going to make it all work out the first time you go. So just think you're going to have to go 10 or 20 times before you start meeting people and talking it up. And people are going to start asking you to go do stuff with them. So if loneliness is a problem for you, the solution is really, really easy. Deal with your laziness and your loneliness will go away. All right, you guys, that's all I got for you today. I certainly hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like and subscribe. If you know somebody who is facing or feeling a little lonely, please send this video to them. I think that oftentimes the media, who has no interest in helping you, has no interest in anyone's betterment, all they're doing is trying to sell soap. They're just trying to sell you ideas and thoughts and sell you advertising. And so by making this into some kind of a hyperbolic crisis, they're hoping that you're going to buy into it and think, oh my God, I'm part of the male loneliness crisis. I've got another problem I didn't even know I had yesterday. Fuck that, okay? Fuck that. You're lazy, okay? You probably got an apartment full of empty pizza boxes and beer cans, okay? You're focused on something, probably video games. Just get off your ass, get outside, and meet some people. That's all you got to do. Anyway, till next time, stay healthy, and if you can, stay single.